America built a jet to win the future, only to watch the future move on before it arrived. The P-80 Shooting Star was sold as a revolution. What it delivered at first was heartbreak, delay, and a fighter outclassed the moment the real contest for the skies began. So why did the US slow-roll the jet age? Who paid the price? And how did a failed fighter end up training the pilots who would dominate for decades? This is the story the brochures never told. As World War II dragged into its final years, whispers of a new kind of aircraft spread across the skies of Europe. Germany had the Me-262, a jet that could outrun and outgun anything the Allies had. Britain was experimenting with its own designs. The future of air combat seemed to be arriving overnight. But in Washington, the US Army Air Forces didn't panic. Despite the pressure, American commanders and engineers refused to rush jets into mass production. They knew the technology was fragile, untested, and prone to disaster. Thousands of proven Mustangs, Thunderbolts, and Lightnings could still overwhelm the enemy's few experimental jets. It was a gamble, choosing patience over speed. While the world braced for the first true jet versus jet battles, the Americans quietly played a longer game. And that patience would lead them to create the P-80 Shooting Star, though not without heavy costs. But before the Shooting Star, America built something else. A machine never meant to win, but simply to prepare. Before the Shooting Star ever touched the runway, America tested the waters with its very first jet, the Bell P-59 Era Comet. On paper, it was groundbreaking, the first US jet fighter to take flight. In reality, it was underpowered, sluggish, and hopelessly outmatched by piston engine fighters already in service. Pilots knew it. The Era Comet wasn't built to win dogfights. It was built to train. Its purpose was simple: give American aviators a taste of what jet propulsion felt like before the real thing arrived. Some called it a flying classroom, others a waste of precious wartime resources. But the Era Comet wasn't about victories. It was about buying time to build something better. And in the shadows of Lockheed's top-secret Skunk Works division, a legendary engineer was already sketching the blueprint for that something better. His name was Kelly Johnson, and his creation promised to leapfrog America into the jet age, if it didn't destroy its test pilots first. Clarence Kelly Johnson was already a legend in aviation. He had designed the P-38 Lightning, one of the deadliest fighters of the war, and his reputation for solving the impossible made him the natural choice to lead America's jet revolution. Working inside Lockheed's secretive Skunk Works, Johnson and his small, hand-picked team developed what would become the P-80 Shooting Star. Unlike the Era Comet, this wasn't a placeholder. It was designed to be fast, sleek, and lethal, powered by an advanced turbojet engine. But secrecy came at a price. The program was a race against both time and physics, with pressure mounting as intelligence reports poured in about German jets cutting through Allied bombers in Europe. The US needed proof that its gamble on patience and careful engineering hadn't been a fatal mistake. Inside the hangars, optimism was sky high. On the runways, however, reality was waiting. Because before the Shooting Star could shine, it would take the lives of two of America's greatest pilots. For all its promise, the P-80's early journey was written in blood. In 1944, during a test flight over California, Lockheed's chief test pilot, Milo Burcham, lost his life when the Shooting Star suddenly failed. Just months later, tragedy struck again, this time claiming Richard Bong, America's top ace of World War II, credited with 40 aerial victories in the Pacific. These weren't just names in a logbook. Burcham had been the fearless pioneer, pushing the aircraft to its limits, while Bong was a national hero, celebrated as the very best fighter pilot America had ever produced. Their deaths sent shockwaves through both the military and the public. The Shooting Star was supposed to symbolize the future, but instead, it became a reminder of how unforgiving experimental technology could be. Still, Washington refused to abandon the project. Too much had been invested, and the US was determined to prove that its jet gamble would pay off. And so, despite the heartbreak, the P-80 was pushed into service, arriving just as the war it was built for came to an end. By 1945, the Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star was finally ready. Sleek, modern, and faster than anything America had fielded before, it looked like the jet that could redefine air combat. But history has a cruel sense of timing. The war it was designed for was already ending. The Shooting Star never faced German jets over Europe, never clashed with Japan's desperate air defenses. When it did see real combat a few years later, during the Korean War, the world had already moved on. Soviet-built MiG-15s, sleek, swept-wing fighters, outclassed the straight-wing P-80 almost immediately. The future of American air power was outdated before its first major battle. For the pilots who trained on it, the Shooting Star was still a thrill. Fast, powerful, and unlike anything they had flown before. But on the front lines, it was clear. The jet age wasn't just about having jets, it was about having the right jets. Yet instead of fading into obscurity, the Shooting Star would reinvent itself and secure a legacy no one expected. The Shooting Star's combat career may have fizzled, but its second life would prove far more important. Rebranded as the T-33, a two-seat trainer, the aircraft became the classroom of the jet age. Generations of American and Allied pilots took their first steps into high-speed flight behind its controls. It was sturdy, forgiving, and reliable. Everything a frontline fighter wasn't. Nations around the world adopted it, and soon the failed fighter was shaping the very air forces that would dominate the Cold War. From NATO allies in Europe to partners in Asia, the T-33 quietly became one of the most widely used trainers in aviation history. Ironically, the P-80 Shooting Star achieved greatness not by winning battles, but by preparing others to fight them. Its role as a trainer transformed it from a disappointment into an unsung hero of aviation. And yet, its true legacy wasn't just about training pilots. It was about proving a philosophy that would change how America built its air power forever. The Shooting Star may have lost its chance to be the war-winning jet America dreamed of, but in failure, it taught a lesson that shaped every aircraft that followed. While Germany rushed unfinished jets into combat and paid the price, the US took a slower, steadier path, testing, refining, and sometimes sacrificing until safety and reliability matched speed. That philosophy became the backbone of American air dominance. Every fighter that came after, the Sabre, the Phantom, the Eagle, the Raptor, stood on the foundation laid by the P-80. It was the imperfect pioneer, the jet that stumbled so future aircraft could soar. For the public, the Shooting Star was just another early fighter. But for pilots and engineers, it was proof that being first doesn't matter, being ready does. The hidden truth is that its greatest victory wasn't in combat, but in ensuring the US would never fall behind in the skies again. And what came after the Shooting Star would prove that lesson in the most dramatic way possible. The Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star was supposed to be America's entry ticket into the jet age. Instead, it became a symbol of something far more powerful: the value of patience, discipline, and lessons learned through loss. It never won the skies of Europe, and it couldn't keep pace in Korea, but it trained the pilots who would go on to fly the Sabres, Phantoms, and Eagles that defined American air supremacy. Its story reminds us that not every breakthrough shines in its first moment. Sometimes, the machines that look like failures are the very ones that pave the way for dominance. The Shooting Star wasn't the jet that changed the war, but it may have been the jet that changed the future. And in the years that followed, the next generation of American jets would prove just how high that future could soar.